Ah, so that's what it was, as I glimpsed at my in-laws' house from a distance. The moment I touched upon the truth, I was speechless. What had Tad and his family been thinking when they looked at Violet all this time? How many times had they deceived Violet with a calm face? Unforgivable. I will make sure you all fall to hell no matter what. My name is Scarlett. I'm 45 years old, struggling with a zipper around my stomach on my ceremonial clothes that I haven't worn in a long time. I thought I hadn't changed much in appearance since my younger days, but clearly I've accumulated visceral fat. I first wore this outfit when I was 30. My younger sister Violet, who had a weak heart since childhood, passed away at the young age of 27. She died of heart failure after complications from pneumonia. Miraculously, I was the only one who had a conversation with Violet on her last day, as I happened to visit her in the hospital. She had only been married for 2 years. She must have had so many things she wanted to do. She couldn't have imagined leaving this world like this. Remembering Violet's smile, saying she wanted to walk under the autumn leaves after being discharged, filled me with a heavy heart. On the day of the funeral, still unable to accept the tragedy that befell my dearest sister, an incident occurred. It was just before the ceremony started. I went to the bathroom, and there was Tad, Violet's husband, talking on the phone in a nearby rest area. Yeah, I think things will settle down a bit after the funeral and the 49th day memorial service. Yeah, well, I guess I should keep it low until the first anniversary. I normally don't eavesdrop on people's phone calls, but this time I couldn't help but be concerned. What does he mean by keeping it low until the first anniversary? That's surely about Violet's. Tad's casual tone didn't seem like a conversation with a colleague. All the in-laws were attending the ceremony. Who was he talking to? Sorry to keep you waiting. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, no, the kid is fine. They haven't figured it out yet. Neither Violet nor her family have any clue that I have a child. Just stay relaxed at home. I was stunned. Did he just say he has a child? Violet and Tad didn't have children. They chose not to because of uncertainties about Violet's health during pregnancy. They were both in their first marriages, and we had never heard anything about Tad having a child. What on earth is going on? Honestly, Tad's incomprehensible conversation only confused me, and I couldn't gather my thoughts. But then I suddenly remembered the words Violet desperately tried to tell me just before she was taken to the operating room. Parents home, a child soon after. Violet lost consciousness and passed away without waking up again, so I never heard the rest, and I was the only one who heard those words until now. The shock of losing Violet was too great, and I didn't have the capacity to consider the meaning of her words. But the words parents home from Violet and Tad's, just relax at home. If it was the house they lived in, Violet would have said home, not parents' home, and there are no children at our parents' home. Thinking about it, I realized something. Could it be that the person on the phone is Tad's child or living at Tad's parents' home? Once this thought struck me, I couldn't stay still. If this was true, I couldn't forgive Tad. Eager to verify my suspicion, I left the funeral home right after laying the flowers for Violet and headed straight to Tad's parents' home. Tad's parents' home is within walking distance of the house where Violet and he lived. Tad himself said he wanted to live in this area because I'm an only child and my parents are elderly, so I want to live near them. Violet, though living near her in-laws, often expressed her concern, saying, I'm worried whether we can manage with the increased family interactions. But in reality, they hardly ever visited and had almost no family interaction. Perhaps that's why at the funeral, Tad's parents hardly seemed to war in Violet's passing. I was a bit appalled at how they were constantly fiddling with their mobile phones. Well, if their relationship was distant, perhaps this is to be expected, but they could have hidden their true feelings a bit more at such a time. Thinking about their attitude, I hesitated to ring the doorbell at Tad's parents' home. Normally no one should be in the house. Everyone should be at Violet's funeral. But what if someone comes out? What should I say? I still had no evidence of Tad's infidelity. Facing an enemy in a state of insufficient information, I wasn't confident I could win. While pondering, I sneaked around to the garden and peeked inside the house. The windows were open, and I could see inside clearly. What if someone's really there? I was startled at that moment. Wait, don't run around, come here. Don't be wild. A child who had just come out into the garden, making a commotion, was followed by an unfamiliar woman. I quickly hid and watched the two of them from the shadows. The child's face looked a lot like Tad's. His steps were still unsteady. He must have started walking just a few months ago. The woman was about the same age as Tad. The area around her mouth indeed resembled the child's, making it clear that she must be the mother. Ah, did that man truly betray Violet? Since when? When did Violet realize it, though? The puzzle pieces in my mind fit neatly, but more troubling thoughts emerged and I couldn't feel any relief. Instead, tears started to form. I won't forgive him. In Violet's place, I will definitely bring that man down to hell. I vowed to do so. Later, I returned to the funeral home and received Violet's canes. Everyone suspected me for leaving the ceremony, but they seemed convinced when I said I couldn't stay there due to the shock of losing Violet. I was relieved that no one seemed to suspect that I went to Tad's parents' home. I didn't want Tad or the in-laws to harbor any strange doubts. The next day, I immediately decided to hire the only investigation service in the area to investigate Tad, and it turned out to be run by Violet's friend, Riley. I remembered her well since she attended the funeral. Riley revealed that Violet had also hired her company to investigate her husband. After I told him the results of the investigation, Violet felt ill and passed away. I have a duty of confidentiality, but she loved you very much, Scarlett, so I think she would forgive me for telling you. Riley then explained the background and results of the investigation. Violet had requested it. Once Violet and Tad almost broke up during their engagement. The cause was Tad's so-called cold feet. With the wedding application done and only half a year left until the wedding, he said, "I'm not so confident I can protect Violet with her weak heart. I want some distance." Violet, after much thought, agreed to his request, and they took a break. But after about 2 months, Tad came back, apologized, and said he wanted to marry Violet after all, so they smoothly proceeded to the wedding. After that, Tad, who had caused Violet so much trouble, said he wanted to give her a house in the future and worked tirelessly, even on holidays. Thanks to all this, it seemed that Violet and Tad's time together had greatly reduced. But Violet spoke of it as if it were something sweet, saying, "We'll be fine, won't we?" I thought of it fondly, but actually Tad had started an affair with a childhood friend, Nova, soon after his engagement to Violet. Though they had dated before, they broke up over trivial disagreements. He later met and got engaged to Violet, but Tad was still hung up on his childhood friend. Then, after the affair rekindled through contact from her, they resumed their illicit relationship. Moreover, his cold feet was a lie. Around that time, Nova became pregnant, and Tad, torn about divorcing Violet and marrying her, had apparently confided in some friends. The mistress insisted, "I won't ask for marriage as long as you stay with me, but I will have this child." He didn't want to leave her, nor did he want to tell Violet, his lawful wife, about the outside child. He couldn't deny the child of a woman he loved. She was adamant about having the child despite his wish against it. Tad, unable to find a way out and troubled, consulted his parents. Shockingly, they said, "It's our first grandchild. Let her have it." His parents had always preferred Nova, whom they knew well from childhood, over Violet. Moreover, they seemed displeased with Violet and her family, often complaining about not being able to see grandchildren. Fortunately, Violet is frail. She'll pass away soon, then acknowledge the child and remarry Nova. The mistress wholeheartedly agreed to this outrageous plan. For Tad, it was a favorable proposition. Convinced by his parents' words, he agreed to let Nova have the child. Nova, an only child like Tad, had lost her parents. Thus, Tad's mother and father frequently stayed at the mistress's house, taking care of her before and after the birth. Tad's claims of working on weekends right after marrying Violet were false. He was likely visiting his newborn child. Neighborhood witnesses claimed to have seen Tad frequently visiting Nova's house. It seems the move, supposedly for his elderly parents' concern, was a lie, more about being close to seeing his child. As the child grew to see the grandparents' growth up close, they spent more time at Tad's parents' home, as per the in-laws' wishes. Hence, coming up with various reasons, he kept Violet away from the in-laws' house, resulting in no visits at all. It's appalling how the family condoned the affair. Violet only discovered Tad's infidelity about a month ago. Feeling unwell, Violet had come home early from work and was sleeping. Tad probably didn't realize Violet was there. Normally, Tad hardly ever messaged or called in front of Violet, but on this day, he returned home a bit earlier than usual and made a phone call. "Somewhere, I got off work early. Can I come over now?" Violet, she's at work, so she won't find out. She's been falling ill easily lately and goes to bed early. I'll just say I'm working overtime and stay longer. Yeah, I also want to live with Nova and the others soon. Every time she's sick, I keep hoping it won't be long. Violet, lying in her sickbed, heard this. The pain in my heart is unimaginable. Just thinking about what she must have felt. The incident led Violet to realize Tad's infidelity and hire her friend Riley's investigation service. The investigation results were out, and just as she was about to confront Tad with divorce, she collapsed and never returned. After telling everything, Riley said, lowering her eyes, "Violet must have been so frustrated." Lowered her eyes exactly. "I want to avenge Violet's grudge. I couldn't let the in-laws get the grandchild and Tad remarry. But just grasping the situation, I didn't know what to do." After some thought, an idea struck me. "Riley, are you good with computers?" At my words, Riley smiled and answered, "Leave it to me." The next day, I had into Tad's parents' home when I rang the doorbell. Mother-in-law appeared surprised. "Oh, Scarlett, what brings you here?" "I have something to discuss about Violet's belongings with the family. Is now a good time?" Mother-in-law went silent. Then the press vanished. Maybe they won't let me in. Well, I was a bit anxious and waiting. "Sorry, Scarlett, I was just tidying up. Please come in." Tad appeared. "Oh, Tad, you're here. That's good." My smile made Tad's expression stiffen. He thinks I'm unaware of his affair, but his guilty face says otherwise. In fact, I had just seen the mistress and child through the window. He must have tidied up them. Wonder which room they're in. As I was ushered into the room, the in-laws and Tad looked at me uneasily. Right after sipping the coffee they offered, reading the atmosphere, Tad asked, "What about Violet's belongings?" "Oh, yes, this," I said, placing a photo on the table. Seeing the photo, Tad and the in-laws froze. "Dad, who is this woman?" No, I don't know her." In the photo, Tad and a woman were embracing in bed. This was sent to our house recently, suggesting Tad's infidelity. At my words, the in-laws glared at Tad, and he frantically shook his head. "Wait, I don't remember this photo," Tad exclaimed. I watched Tad's reaction as I produced more photos. Each photo showed Tad kissing the woman or dating at a nearby amusement park. "People who cheat don't say, 'I remember,'" I murmured with downcast eyes. Mother-in-law raised her voice. You are just unbelievable." "Different, Mom. I don't know anything about this." "Lies. Then what are these photos about? You have a child with Nova, don't you?" "Child?" I quickly reacted to mother-in-law's words. Father-in-law opened his mouth awkwardly. Is this child the one you're talking about?" "Then is this woman Nova?" I said, presenting a photo of Tad holding a child. "No!" The in-laws were at a loss for words, and Tad repeatedly yelled, "It's not true!" But mother-in-law, this worst son, slapped Tad's cheek. "Did you have another child? Listen to me, Mom, Dad." However, mother-in-law and father-in-law didn't listen and repeatedly berated Tad for betraying their beloved grandchild. "What are you doing bringing these false photos here?" "I don't really understand either. They were sent to my house. So, Tad, you have a child?" I glared sharply at Tad, who was at a loss for words. Well, honestly, Tad is right. Tad doesn't have another mistress besides Nova. I have no intention of telling them, as I don't want to be accused of defamation later. But these photos are composites that I had Riley make for me. I could have used actual photos of the real mistress and child, but I chose composites for a specific reason. I intended to press them about the child's existence and make them accidentally reveal the truth. But mother-in-law slipped up and spoke sooner than I expected, which was lucky. "Your silence means it's true, right?" Earlier, Penelope also mentioned a child, and Nova didn't, did she? Tad was frozen, and then mother-in-law and father-in-law too as I continued. The information sent said these children are being cared for in this house. That's not true, mother-in-law interrupted my words with a denial. Is that so? There's no way something so absurd could be true. Then show me every room in the house. Without waiting for anyone's permission, I stood up and headed to the next room. Wait, don't just pry into someone's house. Tad raised his voice. If there's nothing to hide, just show me. Don't worry, I don't mind a bit of a mess. That's not the point. Then what's the problem? The problem. I didn't wait for Tad's answer. I pushed past mother-in-law and father-in-law's attempts to stop me and peered into the next room. Not here, so I headed upstairs. Despite some resistance and scraping my knee, it was nothing compared to Violet's pain. I can endure any wound for Violet. Breaking away from the in-laws and pushing past Tad, the moment I opened the door to an upstairs room, there they were. In the room, Nova and the child were sitting on the bed. Oh my, this woman and child are different from the photo. What does this mean? Tad turned pale, and Nova, confused by the photo, looked at us. Yes, it seems Tad was cheating on Violet. Here, look at this photo. I showed Nova the composite photo, and her face twisted in anger as she crumbled it. What is this? You had another woman? Wait, it's not like that. Nova, listen. Furious, Nova and pale, Haddad, I seized the opportunity. So you're another one of Tad's women. Mother-in-law and father-in-law, overwhelmed by the situation, were holding their heads. Why? You said I was the main one, so I agreed not to marry and have your child, and there's another woman. It's different, Nova. This is probably some misunderstanding, someone who looks similar or a composite. Probably. You can't say definitely not. I can't trust you. Nova's trust reached its peak as Tad, confused, failed to deny properly. Such an indecisive man isn't worth trusting. Violet had her life ruined by this man. Nova's face stiffened at my heavy advice. Although Nova also played a part in disrupting life, she probably knows this given her expression, so there's no need to say it. For now, I must act as if I'm on Nova's side to make sure she listens to my words, all for my goal of not letting the in-laws, Nova, or anyone else be happy. Yes, that's right, Nova muttered. Wait, Nova. I'm serious about you. Tad desperately tried to persuade Nova, but I interrupted. So you weren't serious about Violet but made vows in front of her? Tad, you're just not trustworthy. Nova's face clouded over at my words. It seemed she began to doubt whether what I was saying was sincere, especially with the composite photos in the mix. If you were really serious, you wouldn't have been two-timing in the first place. No matter the reason, you'd stick to one person. As I conspicuously repeated my words, Nova's face grew increasingly darker. Tad's face had turned completely pale. He must have felt Nova's feelings slipping away. Let's break up, Tad. I don't want to be just a convenient woman for you. After seeing those photos, I just can't believe you anymore. I can tolerate being the second woman, but certainly not the third. Tad, stunned by Nova's tears, pulled her hand and shouted, "Listen to me!" But Nova shook off his hand, saying, "I don't need acknowledgement anymore. Stay out of my life," and left the house with the child. Tad lost both the child and the woman he planned to marry, and as the in-laws sank into despair, I clenched my fist in triumph. Afterward, I made Tad write a termination of familial relations and cut ties with our family. Even Violet's inheritance, which Tad was supposed to receive, I made him relinquish. Our dad, who is quite imposing, went to the in-laws' house after hearing everything from me and protested. The in-laws, frightened, persuaded Tad. Just give up the inheritance. We don't want any more involvement with that house. It seems they persuaded Tad well. Even though Violet's inheritance was modest, I didn't want to give even an S of it to him. So that was good. Actually, on the day I took the photos to Tad's parents' home, one of the windows was open. As a result, our loud conversation was completely audible outside. That conversation, along with revelations from a friend of Nova's who lived nearby, spread throughout the neighborhood, and the in-laws' actions became well known. As a result, their house was rumored to have skewed morals. Tad quit his job and left the town with the in-laws as if fleeing. Meanwhile, about 2 months later, Nova suddenly appeared at our parents' home. She came to thank me for opening her eyes and wanted to apologize for her past behavior towards Violet, bringing $50,000 for the apology. I should have acknowledged Nova's feelings, but the pain Violet suffered couldn't be resolved with money. It didn't seem right for us to accept money for something the person herself couldn't forgive. I appreciate your gratitude, but I don't want money from someone who... I didn't accept it at all. Instead, I had her donate the money to a child welfare facility near where Violet worked. Worried if she would actually donate, of course, I accompanied her to ensure the donation was made. I'm sure Violet would be pleased with this use of the money. I hope those children will be happy for Violet's sake. On the other hand, it's embarrassing to admit, but I struggled to move on after losing Violet and even suffered from a mental breakdown. There was a time when it got so bad that I had to leave my job, but gradually I recovered. Now I'm working at Riley's investigation agency. Actually, after that incident, Riley and I became very close. We shared the experience of losing something precious, which I think made us understand each other. Despite my previous negative views on marriage due to what happened to Violet, I married my partner of 4 years last year. The pandemic and losing Violet made me realize how unpredictable life is, so I decided to take the step. I want to live without regrets, staying close to my loved ones as long as I can. Watch over me, Violet. I will live a long and full life for both of us. And when I get there, I'll tell you all the fun stories and things you didn't know. So, I'm going to keep living life energetically,